Magic is found in every room, where people connect over a shared purpose. In this weekly podcast, Luke, Hannah and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Hello and welcome to Magic in the Room. I'm Luke Freeman, and today I'm super excited because we're going to be talking about something that I've really become a convert to over the last several years, which is this idea of coaching and organizations taking a coaching approach to leadership and individual leaders growing their coaching skills. Today, I don't have Chris with me. I don't have Hannah with me, but we've got a couple amazing coaching experts from the Purpose and Performance Group team. And I have the honor of working side by side with our guests on a day-to-day basis and just love the work that they do, love learning from them. And so excited to welcome Stephanie Licata and Emma Holland. And I'll just have you guys introduce yourselves. So share a little bit about who you are, your role on the team. Steph, you want to kick us off?
Sure. My name is Stephanie Licata, and I support our executive coaching practice and really how coaching gets integrated into all our client work. And so I guess I'm an OG. I've been here since the beginning and excited to really be able to do what I love, which is not only coach, but also help leaders learn how to coach. So I've been a practicing coach since 2007. Prior to that, I was actually a high school teacher and really got into coaching and then really went to deepen my understanding of coaching and its role in the organization, and went on to study organizational psychology. And so really just, I consider myself sort of a learning professional, and that can mean so many different things. But a lot of what I do is help leaders really learn how to harness the skill of coaching to develop their teams, and how to help organizations really commit to developing a coaching culture.
Yeah, and Steph really leads a lot of our training efforts on when someone says, hey, I want all the leaders in my organization to learn how to take a coaching approach. Steph is more often than not the person who is at the helm, doing that training, doing skills checks, helping work people through trying a new way to lead. And also the person that I reach out to oftentimes as a coach to say, Steph, I'm struggling with this thing. Like, what should we do? What direction should I go? And I get a lot of free coaching from Steph. So Emma, how about you? Tell us a little bit about Emma.
Thanks, Luke. I am Emma Holland. I am new to the PNPG team. I think it's officially been 3 months or so since I've joined, and I serve as our marketing and project specialist. So I'm helping to make sure that our marketing is top notch, but also to make sure that the projects we have going on are running smoothly. But along with that, I became a certified coach back in 2020. Kind of an odd time, I know. The world was changing, but I really had this inkling that I wanted to pursue this back in 2019. It really hit me that I wanted to have the skill set so that I could be a part of conversations to help other women, help other people get to the goals and destinations that they have in mind. And that's what set me off in this journey to become a certified coach. And I currently coach women through different coaching programs, and was so excited to join the PNPG team, since this is something that is so intrinsic to what we do, so that I can start to apply my skills in this world as well, and that I have in my previous background. But yeah, it's just been an honor, and I'm just so excited to be here today to talk about all of this.
Yeah, and I just want to start by saying we believe that coaching is an essential skill for leaders. The research supports it. The desires of the workforce that have changed so much support it, to the extent that we almost never start a organization improvement project where we're helping with strategy, with culture, or with leadership training, where we don't recommend some level of coach skill training for some leaders in the organization. We also, when we're asking people to do a big lift, maybe that's execute a strategy, we will say to a client, like, there's going to be a lot of learning, a lot of change involved in this. If we're at point A, we're trying to get to point B. And we've seen the proof that when we not only help with clarifying strategy, clarifying a change initiative around culture, people services, whatever it is, we think that your key leaders who are going to be involved in this need to be coached because they're going to be learning new behaviors. So we believe in coaching a lot, but I'm excited to have the experts on here because I would love to just kind of strip it down and start from the beginning. What is coaching? How do we define it? And, maybe even what do people sometimes call coaching that really isn't coaching? Like how can the listeners really understand when we say coaching, what are we talking about?
When we say coaching in a completely bare bones, what I often say is coaching is a conversation that facilitates positive change. And the change, though, happens from the coachee, the individual that you're coaching, because the coach is, rather than telling, they're asking, right? They are helping the coachee do their best thinking. So often coaching gets confused with mentoring. And mentoring and coaching are very alike in a lot of ways. They're both supportive relationships. They both are based on trust. But it's the process of mentoring and coaching that really split off. So when you're mentoring, you're sharing your expertise. You're saying, well, this is what I've learned after 10 years of doing this, or whatever it is. You're sharing your expertise to shed light on the journey of another. When you're coaching, the coach is not almost involved in the conversation. They're like in the background. The thinking and the design and the thought process is happening for the coachee, right? So the coach is asking, what does that look like for you if you were to accomplish that goal? Or what's another way you could look at this challenge that you're having? So the coach is really disappearing inside of the coaching conversation and putting all the focus on the coachee to help them do their thinking. And part of being a coach is also allowing someone to be in a space of uncertainty and not have to have all the answers. And so sometimes that mentoring gets collapsed because mentoring is a lot more about giving that expertise, giving those answers. If you think of a mentor that you've had, it's probably someone that had more experience than you or had traveled down paths that maybe you were about to travel down. So it's a little bit different. Both super valuable, but both just have, again, different intentions and different ways of being executed.
Yeah. And I know whenever I started getting won over to this idea of coaching as a place where the voice of the coach and even the agency of the coach kind of disappears inside that experience and that conversation with the coachee, one thing that won me over was this belief that people have the answers to their problems. And as we work with organizations, we see that over and over again. And I really believe it in a organizational system setting that usually the people closest to the work have the answers for how to move us forward. And our work as consultants oftentimes is just how do we create a space, create the systems, create this psychological safety, build relationships with leaders, between leaders and the folks that they lead, so that those ideas and those strategies from those who are closest to the work really can become identified and we can move forward. And for whatever reason, I hadn't made that connection from that belief that organizations have the expertise and information that they need to solve their problems. They just sometimes need help getting it out. To this belief that individuals really are the best people to solve their own problems if we can provide a way to help them clarify and get that out. And so, to me, like, I really was won over experiencing that, like, how do I help excavate from you as the coachee the best answer to whatever challenge it is that you're facing? So Emma, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. And as you're saying that, Luke, it just makes me think about, as a coach, we are helping this person basically get out of their own way. And stop letting this fear or the way of doing things hold them back. It's releasing the reins and saying, look, you are the expert in this. You are the expert in your life. You have the tools. We're just helping you sharpen them, right? Like we are just helping you unveil these things in your life so that you can take the action that you need. And it's so powerful to be a part of. And I didn't really have I had great mentors, but I never really had a coach and someone that really pushed me to this. And finally, when I got one, I was like, oh, I want that too. Like I want this skill set too, a part of my life. And I don't know how. I'm just like, I'm shocked when people are like, oh, I don't know that, or I don't have that. It's like, you should have that in your life. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious for either of you, how did you, because you all are really the experts here. I mean, I'll say I'm much better at team coaching than individual coaching, and helping teams, bring the right path forward to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious for you, kind of that coaching with individuals, how did you come to a point where you were like, yeah, this is something that I want to be a part of my life and my career moving forward. This is something that is worth me investing time becoming an expert in?
My undergraduate degree is actually in counseling. And when I was learning about counseling, and I'd always loved to help people discover an aspect of themselves or set themselves free or grow in a certain way. And I realized that it was too emotional for me with counseling. Just that I wanted to do something that was a little bit more removed from sort of the past and really focus more on the future. And that's really what coaching does. So I still wanted to help people. I still wanted to serve people, but I wanted to do it in a different way. And so I stumbled into coaching and really found that it was a little bit of a lighter way to support people. It was still a challenge and still a skill, but it was just a little bit not as emotionally involved. Not that I don't care about the people that I coach, but it's more focused on not diagnosing the past, but really creating the future. And that's another modality that sometimes counseling and coaching get collapsed too. Like, we're not here to help you find out what happened when you were 5. Like, coaching is really about, given the person that you are in this moment, what can we create, right? Given the leader that you are in this moment, what needs to happen now for you to elevate your ability to lead others, right? So it just, for me, was something that made more sense, that I knew that I would enjoy. And then so I just started studying and just really wanted to understand not only its role with the individual. I really, really got curious about how it can transform an organization and why now it's, when I first started studying coaching, it was not a thing like talking about coaching that much in organizations. It was like a very elite thing that like executives got, right? Executives get access to coaching, right? And so I really enjoyed seeing it in the past decade really become a little bit more mainstream within organizations.
Yeah, I echo that, Steph. That's something that I, in my past career, wanted so desperately in my organization, was to have a coaching culture and to have a coaching program where I felt like that was of value, and not just my boss was my mentor or my friend or whatever, but they were actually helping me progress, that they were helping me get out of my own way. And I never had that. And so that's really one of the reasons that I got into coaching. It was 2 parts. It was, I became a mom and I wanted to be my best self for my children. And I've sat and thought about, what do I really enjoy? And I love, same as you, Steph, I love helping people find that joy again, and like having this new realization of growth or of change, or of like, oh my gosh, I can do this thing. I can be this thing. Amazing. And it's just by helping them take off the blindfold and like helping them get out of their own way. And so that's what started me into coaching. And then through that training, I saw that, wow, where I currently work, needs this so desperately, and I want to provide that. I want to bring this to my organization. Unfortunately, it wasn't well received, and that wasn't a program that they were willing to take on. But I still know, obviously, how important that is to an organization to have. And also, as individuals, it doesn't have to just be a thing that you do for work or a part of a program. It can be, and that's great. But this skill set is so, I mean, I've had so much better conversations with multitudes of different individuals just because I have this skill set that has trained me to listen, to step back and step away from the conversation being about me or what I can bring, but allowing myself to listen to what these individuals are saying. And it's helped me generate better relationships and better conversations. And it's such an incredible skill set that, yeah, I'm so grateful for that. I took it upon myself because I wanted it, but how much even better it would be if organizations offered this to the managers, but also to employees, to have this experience where they are having those types of conversations.
Yeah, so let's really go there, because when we talk about creating a coaching culture in an organization, I'll be honest, like sometimes I see people's eyes kind of glaze over, or like a fear of that sounds really big. If I think about a large organization, like, oh my gosh, we've got hundreds of managers or people who are in supervisory roles. How would we move them all to being coaches? Like, do they all have to have individual coaches? It just sounds really big. So, Steph, I would love it if you could break it down. When we say creating a coaching culture, what do we really mean by that? And what are some pathways that we use, or some programs that we use, to help organizations start taking steps towards building coaching cultures?
Sure. So, building a coaching culture it's just a place to start, right? So, all it means is that we're saying we're interested in bringing coaching to the forefront of how we lead people, and we're engaging in what that process looks like, right? And it doesn't have to. It's a very subtle thing, actually. Part of it is just defining that as a leader in this organization, that you are accountable to develop the people on your team. It's just by making that commitment. And if you're going to make leaders accountable for developing people on their team, it's just equipping them with some core fundamental coaching skills that are really just a subtle tweak, a subtle nuance into how you approach a situation. And coaching really is like riding a bike. Once you do learn it and you kind of know how it feels, it's kind of like when you really are figuring out balance for the first time and you get it, right? Even if you don't go on a bike for another year, you get that balance, right? So you really do learn how different coaching is from just mentoring or training or teaching or consulting. And as you develop it as a skill, you learn just by coaching. So it's not that you have to go to 7 years of all this intense training. It's learning the skills and practicing the skills. So part of our internal coaching certification program is just dripping leaders some really core skills, not a super ton of time, and then encouraging them to practice. So you learn to coach by coaching, right? Not by just sitting and reading a book or being in hours of training. It's just some simple skills where you're then encouraged to practice over and over and over, and you can start to see the results as you're having different conversations.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the powerful things that I've seen is, organizations who start equipping leaders with coaching skills. There's almost this flywheel that speeds up as people start to have success in relationships with direct reports that they've really struggled with in the past. That's one area where I think it shows up fast and it shows up in dramatic ways. I have this person who is always complaining, and I don't know what to tell them because I wish they would just take responsibility. And, everything I tell them to do, they just come back and tell me why it didn't work. And, that leader will come back, a week or two after a coaching training session and say, I tried coaching them, and like their problem got solved because they solved it. And I have a completely different relationship with them now. And it's interesting because let's say in a cohort of, I don't know, maybe 20 people who are learning coach skills, there will be 4 or 5 of those after the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then it really just picks up this momentum where people are, oftentimes they're a little skeptical, I think, when it starts. But really quickly, that cohort is like, we all need to be coaches all the time. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. So it's really fun to watch that switch flip.
Yeah. I agree. It is. Sometimes it just like, it's a small practice. Like you said, if you can just start this small practice and of being intentional, right? And just digging a little bit deeper, listening to this person, just watching the magic of this change, of this realization in them, or of this, they're solving their own problem, it just takes a couple of tries for you to see, wow, how much can really change in people by having that type of relationship or conversation.
And just to make it tangible, like one of the organizations that we worked with, we had trained like nearly 300 of their leaders in coaching. And then we revisited for like a sort of a advanced coaching review. And we had about 70 managers elect to come on their free time to this optional coaching follow-up. And I asked them how much, what's changed? What's changed now? You have these coaching skills. Tell me what's different. And someone raised their hand and she said, well, I fired less people. And I was like, well, what does that mean? She was like, well, I'm just having conversations with people earlier. I'm getting to know them. I'm addressing problems. I'm seeing beyond the issue because I'm coaching more, and I'm retaining people, right? And so like, what organization doesn't want that, right? It's like, what organization doesn't want their leaders to be relating better to their team members such that they are retaining people in the organization, right? And that was the first thing last year. I fired less people. I'm like, oh, like what does that mean, right? And so it's just it's teaching people, look, we don't teach these kind of relationship skills, right? We don't teach them right in school. Yes, there are some social and emotional learning curriculum that people try to wedge into all the required stuff, but people don't learn some of these things, and people in organizations are mostly promoted for technical acumen, not leadership acumen. So they're really good at what they do, where they're subject matter experts, but they will not often have as much development in the leadership area. Now, some of them may, not everybody, but it tends to be in times you're in a situation where people are not really developed as people that develop others, right? And that can be very challenging, right? And so it's like in the automotive industry, when they promote the number one sales guy or salesperson, to the head of the sales team, but that's like not the person that you want to promote, because they're really good at individual sales, not necessarily empowering other people.
That's right.
You want to promote the number 2 and number 3 person, and who might actually, be a little bit more focused on being able to lead others rather than just individual results.
That's right. That's such a good way to put it. Yeah. I mean, I recently was having a conversation with someone who was like, yeah, I just got promoted to a manager role, and I'm going to be doing hiring and the firing and whatever, but I love sales. Like that's what I want to be doing, the sales. I don't want to be doing that. And there's some people who do and some people who don't. And for the people who really care about developing people or about helping people navigate their path forward in their career, their life, give them the opportunities to speak up, give them the opportunity to shine, and just see where the skill set, takes them. Because your number one person on the team who's a subject matter expert or whatever might not be the best one to manage, because you're not necessarily managing on this skill set or like this trade that they're good at. You're managing their ability to grow, right? And you're managing how they operate as a person in that organization.
Yeah. And I like how this conversation about coaching kind of went to how we're equipping first-time leaders, and that transition from high performer, individual contributor into a leadership role. Every time we deploy a supervisor training, we include coach skills in it for a reason. And, there's lots of different ways to train first-time leaders or do leadership training, maybe for people who have been in that supervisor manager role for a while, but have never actually gotten formal training around it. And if we're really looking for something simple that's a little bit more technical, tactical, coach skill training is where I think everyone should start. Now, do I also think that we should talk about productivity of a leader, about performance development from a little bit more theoretical standpoint? Should we talk about things like how do I do disciplinary action? How do I create a team? What is a healthy team? Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of things that leaders need to know about that. But as far as bang for your buck, like for the time that people are spending in training, coach skills is an awesome place to start, where people really are empowered, some of those stories that you told, to make real change in that relationship with their direct reports, immediately. Yeah. So I'm kind of curious, everyone who's listening is well aware that things have changed a lot the last few years. And there's all sorts of debate and theory about how much of that was already trends that just got accelerated by the pandemic, how much of it is completely new, how much of the change that we've seen is actually going to be stable, how much is going to revert back to pre-pandemic. Besides all of that, right, we know that the workforce has different expectations. We know that they're exhibiting different behaviors as far as how long they stay and how vocal they're being about what their expectations are for work and a meaningful, fulfilling work experience. So tell me about how you've seen the role of leaders who take a coaching approach changing, has become more important. How should we be thinking about that in this time of change?
One of the ways we should be thinking about it is really around making sure that you know your people, right? So one of the things that, we've seen from people, being forced to stay home for long periods of time during the pandemic is they got to think. They had time to think, and people really started to think about, what do I want my life to look like? Right? As people were given the opportunity to work from home, they discovered I can actually have breakfast with my kid and then walk to my computer. And there's this whole other life now that's available to me. Yeah. So people's priorities have changed, right? And I'm not saying everywhere in every industry this, not making this blanket statement. I'm just saying this is the first condition or situation in a long time in history that affected every single human being on the planet. If you think about that, every single human being on the planet was in some way affected, right? And is still being affected, and we don't even know the long-term effects, right? So, but coaching as a skill, right, is a relationship builder. And so it's the importance of building relationships within your teams is critical, because nobody wants to be caught off guard. You should never be surprised if someone leaves your organization, right? You should never be surprised in your performance review. You should never be surprised. You should be whoa, you should really, if you really are surprised, that means that a relationship was missing, that didn't clue that somebody wasn't clued in, right? Yeah. So if you want to understand your workforce, right, you have to make relationship building a priority. And especially now that people have seen another way, another side of work, they've seen it, and they've shifted their priorities and how they want to experience their lives. And they've seen, if you really think about it, anybody that was driving to work for 1 hour, had a 1 hour commute, if they were driving to work 5 days a week, if you do that math, right, they were actually driving 10 hours a week, right, to every day. 10 times 4 is 40. They were spending an extra work week in their vehicle, right? And so when they were forced to stay home, they got 1 work week back,
Yeah.
right? And people started businesses and did all kinds of things and spent time with their family, right? So when you put coaching as a management modality, as a required or preferred management modality, you install a system for relationship development. And when you have strong relationships in your organization, you can better understand your employees, you can better understand their needs, and you can better shift with their needs so that you are retaining the people that you want to retain in your organization. And those needs may have drastically changed in the past 2 or 3 years. And it's important for us to get to know what those are.
Yeah, I mean, we've known through Gallup's surveys, at this point, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of survey responses they have on employee engagement, but consistently they've found that 70% of the variance of engagement in individuals can be explained by their relationship with their direct supervisor. So in other words, there's a lot of things that create the employee experience, that create employee engagement, but the bulk of it, 70%, over half, really comes down to what is that key relationship with the supervisor. So when we look, and this is pre-pandemic and now, the same number holds true. When we look at where's the biggest point of leverage to improve outcomes around turnover, around engagement, around productivity, around safety, like that relationship is the place, and coaching can be a huge part in closing that gap. Emma, any thoughts from you? Like what's changed these last couple of years, and what does that have to do with coaching?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's a perfect example of it, but like I was working for a larger corporation, and this larger corporation didn't move forward with any kind of coaching program. And especially not during the pandemic, and then not, when we were home for a year, and then when we came back to the office, there wasn't any kind of support in that, when I think that was a big opportunity to invest in some coaching conversations between leaders and their employees as they're coming back into the office. Obviously, you spend a year at home, like your priorities have changed. You've changed as a person, how you function. And that would have been a great opportunity. But now, so I left that role because during the pandemic, realized that I wanted more freedom with my time, and I wanted more ownership with my role. And that's why joining the PNPG team has been so phenomenal for me, because I get to speak up, and I get to be the leader that I know that I wasn't given that opportunity, and I'm able to step into those roles. So you are seeing that shift of people leaving the corporate environment, moving to smaller companies, because they saw something in themselves over the past couple of years that maybe they didn't know that they had. And whether they did, I think a lot of people did a lot of self-reflective work, right? Like they took that upon themselves, even if an organization wasn't doing that. But how much cooler would it have been if organizations were doing that and letting those people thrive and create new ideas for the organization? So I think that's a really big opportunity now, is like realizing that people have a lot of ideas. And if we just took the time to listen to them, to listen to, where they thought things could go, or maybe what they're being held back from, is that starting to listen and decide if that's something that the organization provide would be so powerful. So I've just seen such change, and I'm just blown away by how people are moving from a corporate environment to a smaller company, or maybe it's even vice versa. But going to a place that values those relationships, that values investing in their employees and having those types of conversations where they want them to develop, they want them to grow. Yeah, that's what people need.
Yeah.
It's a need now. It's not like, I think before it was like a want, right? Like they wanted, someone to care, but now it's like, you need to be listening to your employees or they will leave.
Yeah, I like that, framing coaching as a methodology for hearing employees as well, for doing that exercise in listening. And also, as you mentioned, capturing ideas and moving people, like giving people the agency to try new things, and really even giving the organization clarity and decision points. Because I think
Right.
that's what a lot of coaching is, right? It's bringing people to decision points and helping them realize they have the power to make a decision when they're at those decision points.
Right.
So we can do the same thing for an organization when we help individuals clarify what decisions, what ideas they have, right? It brings it up to that space where we can say, yeah, I think maybe we could do that. I'm going to bring that up at next week's team meeting. And I'm going to pitch this idea and see what happens.
Right.
And giving people the agency to do that is always helpful. And it's strategic, right? We know the marketplace continues to change at a rapid pace. We know that innovation continues to become more and more important for every organization, regardless of its scale. And so using coaching as a distiller of ideas to help people move towards actioning those ideas makes a ton of sense.
Yes, absolutely.
The other thing I heard as you all were sharing was this idea that everyone experienced the pandemic. And, we've been having lots of really, really interesting conversations with clients around trauma. And, at some point before March of 2020, like there was a portion of the population that had experienced trauma in their life, something that wasn't 100%. Right. I don't know how many people had experienced trauma. Right. And there's big T trauma, little T trauma. We won't get into the whole trauma episode. There's another recording of that. You can go listen to it with an actual therapist.
Don't traumatize me, Luke.
Yeah. But the fact is, essentially 100% of our population has experienced trauma now 2.5 years later. And so when we think about the effects of trauma, one of those that shows up in workforces, especially in workforces that have experienced high amounts of trauma. So when we work with underprivileged, workforces, if we work with Native American enterprise that has large Native American population, we're talking about generations of trauma. And sometimes what we see is the erosion of agency, right? And people who are saying, I think things are always going to be this way. We might have a meeting, but then nothing changes, right? And that giving of agency is one of the hallmarks of coaching that I think can be really powerful right now in this, I don't know, are we post-pandemic yet? Something, right? In this 2.5 years after March 2020 space that we're in, right? We need to be giving people hope to move forward. And we have a whole episode on hope with an expert, but just to remind, hope is 3 things. It's a vision of a better tomorrow. It's having a pathway to get to that better tomorrow, like that you can see there's a plan, there's a roadmap, there's steps I can take. And then the third thing is agency, to be able to make decisions to walk that pathway. I have the personal power to make a change that will enable that better tomorrow to happen. And coaching hits all of those things. It helps people crystallize what is my vision of a better tomorrow. Maybe I've never put words to it. Maybe I have just some sort of like angsty feeling about I want something else, but I don't quite know what it is. Right. So let's help people get clear on that. What is it? What is that thing that my soul is kind of wanting?
Yeah.
Okay, great. We've clarified it. Like, what are your options? How could you get there? Right. So hitting that second mark, what's the pathway? What's the roadmap to make that better tomorrow happen? And then the third is agency. Like, what could you do today to move a step in that direction? What conversation do you need to have to move a step down your path that you've identified?
Yeah.
Right. Coaching hits all of those. And so for me, a leader taking a coaching approach inside an organization is someone who's creating hope from a space of cynicism. And they're giving hope to their team members that tomorrow can be better and we can get there together. And you as an individual employee, you can get there together.
Yeah.
So coaching culture, kind of a big deal.
That's beautiful, Luke. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I never did this exercise until I was being coached and then became a coach. But when was the last time that we as individuals took a look at our values? And our values now have probably changed, in the past 3 years. It's like I've done like my personal values, and then I've also done my values at work. Like what do I like value in this role, and what do I desire in this role, right? And they're probably like there's some bleeding over, but there might be some that are maybe more specific or a little bit different. But questions like that are so powerful that we would never spend time doing unless it was something like in a conversation like that. Like I was never challenged to think about those things until I was in this space. And how powerful is it to have that clarity to know what my personal values are and how I am living out in the world, and how I am, like you said, having hope for the future of like how I'm going to get to these things. I mean, huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, and this is part of the disconnect. At the end of the day, though, leaders need to transform that hope into something tangible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they need to be able to see that there's a reason, right, to be having these conversations, right? And so one of the reasons to have these types of conversations is that people's standards for what they're willing to tolerate in the workplace have risen, and they continue to rise. Like every decade, there's more and more that my standard of what I expect from my work environment is higher, and it really should be. We spend most of our life, if you think about it, we spend more of our life at work. Right. If you're, if you're, pretty average person that has a job and whatever it is, like, I mean, unless you're independently wealthy, right, and you don't need to work, right, you're going to spend a large chunk of your time in a workplace, right? And so if companies want to understand why, like, how does this make sense as an investment in terms of helping people learn coaching, it's that if you can create environments that are desirable, that people want to work there, that will get around, right? That will spread, right? And so you want to be a place that people say, who don't work there, oh, I hear great things about that place. I'd love to work there, right? I hear you have autonomy. I hear you have this. I hear you have that. So if you're not concerned with what people are saying about your company who don't work there, whether they want to work there or say, oh, I heard I don't never want to work there, right? If you're not concerned about your employer branding, then you should be, right? And if you, it's not going to happen. Like and there's all kinds of studies about, like, you can put the ball pit in and the free beer. It's not about the perks.
It's not about that.
Really about how you're treated, the relationships that you have, the ability to develop your career, all of that, right? So if companies are confused about, like, why should we spend money on this, right? It's really not spending money. It's investing in your workforce. And when you invest in your workforce, they will work for you and they will produce for you, right? And
exactly right.
If you can get people to that, when we talk about engagement, right? It's really about getting people to unlock their discretionary effort, right? When you have a mediocre to below mediocre workplace, people will put that mediocre level there. They'll say, I'll do just what I need to do to get things done, right? When you have an extraordinary workplace, people will take the lid off their discretionary effort, that part of their effort they're willing to give, right? They're going to take the lid off and they're going to give more because they feel like they are getting more, right? And so that's just math. Right. If you give more opportunities for people to grow, they will give back to you more quality outputs, and that will impact whatever you're doing, whatever your organization's up to. Right. And so that's really, and in the past, when we've done coaching certifications, part of what we have people do is practice on the employees that are already there. And so the employees will fill out surveys. And they will say, I'll never forget this, people will say, I feel like I was given a gift, like my company chose me to be this practice coachee, right? They are investing in me. They've said those words, right? When the employee felt like they were being coached as sort of this gift, they felt like the company was doing something for me, right?
Yeah.
And so remember, the leader is the company to the employee, right? Whatever the leader does, that is the company, right? So my company XYZ does this or does that. It's what the leader does, and that becomes the company, right? And so you have to make sure that your leaders are representing your company in a way that you would say that behavior is something I'm proud of, right? And
Yeah. I mean, and the company I was previously at, I mean, I will say they did a phenomenal job at building community and relationships and really making it a space where people are like, oh, that sounds like a fun place to work because it's good people. And there was definitely this community relationship type of vibe in the company. But taking it, I just think that so much has changed in 3 years. I mean, companies are just not the same because people are not the same. And so that is not just what we need. We don't just need community anymore. We need community and intentional relationships I know that this company is investing in me. I know that this company believes in me and my growth, and they want me here for a long time. And they're going to give me this gift. Like you said, Steph, they're going to give me this gift because they want me here. That says so much more than beer on Fridays or a ping pong table or whatever. We need more now.
Yeah. So let's get really practical. So if someone says, okay, yes, I understand, I got to give, what I'm wanting, like I got to give first. And then I know my leaders are going to step up and I know that their team members are going to step up. Let's get our leaders trained with coaching skills. Let's have an internal certification program where they learn what coaching is. They learn how to take that approach. They practice it. They have a practicum. Just practically, how are some ways that we've shaped that before, Steph? And what does that look like kind of from the company's experience of it?
So when we first started doing this several years ago, prior to the pandemic, we would go and lead things live. And so we're starting to obviously get back to doing live on-site training. So we would have a live on-site kickoff where we would really help people understand what coaching was, what a coaching culture was, and what they were going to need to do to participate. And then really what it winds up looking like is we know managers are busy. We know they don't have a lot of time to sit in an all-day thing, right? So we went and we did 90 minutes of let's have this kickoff, or 2 hours, let's have this kickoff. And then every other week we spend 60 minutes with them and we give them a skill. And then we give them a coaching challenge. So the best part about this program is even if you only have 40 or 50 people in it, you have hundreds of people benefiting because those people are coaching in the organization. So we'll teach them a skill. We'll say, okay, now you're going to practice this skill on the court in the next 2 weeks, and you're going to come back prepared to share. And then we just keep building the skills and keep building the skills. And it culminates in a practicum where they can actually choose someone in their organization to give 4 official coaching sessions. So we teach people how to coach informally. So it's not like they have to all have these sit down coaching sessions. We teach them how to coach on the fly. We teach them how to coach in an official performance conversation, how to coach in conflict, how to do peer coaching, team coaching, all different scenarios, right? But give you the fundamentals, give you the scenarios, give you all some additional ways to see coaching, lenses to see coaching through, and then you practice for 4 sessions, and then you get evaluated by your coachee, and you do a self-evaluation as well. So you really are doing the work, but it is not a heavy sit in trainings for 3 days. It really is here's the skill, go practice it, let's evaluate. And then I'm coaching people, right, on how maybe they were challenged. So they're getting coached while they're learning coaching.
Yeah. Great. And so if someone's like, well, I don't know if a full-blown certification with someone like Purpose and Performance Group or another, firm makes sense. What are some small things that they can do just to get started right now? I know we have a webinar that we'll talk about in a minute. That's, I think, a great resource that really talks about a case study that people can go watch the recording of. But just small, practical, maybe I don't have, maybe I'm a manager of a department. I can't bring in a big program. Like, what could I do to help my supervisors be better coaches? What could I do to be a better coach myself?
So we use a lot of great resources here that people can really start consuming right now. So one of the books that we use is called Coactive Coaching, and it's really practical, really tangible. It's a great resource. So a lot of the skills of coaching are things that you can learn and start to apply. So even if you just started like, hey, we're going to do this book, we're going to do this optional book club or whatever it is, to have people start reading, other books that we always, use the leadership challenge, just to start that context for what are those exemplary leadership practices that might foster a coaching culture. So even if you can do some bite-sized things, right, from some reading or some blogs, or maybe even just assign, hey, once a month when we have our team gathering, we're going to focus on an article or something like that. We're going to go to Gallup and look at a statistic and have a conversation about it, just to start the conversation. Like, you want to start the conversation. You can't just all of a sudden like plug people into a program, right? But make sure you're starting the conversation with literature, with this is being written about every day, all day, all over the internet, right? So see if there's, free webinars you can participate in and things you can participate in to learn a little bit more, right? So that there are things that you can share with your leaders that they can sort of get in some bite-sized format.
And one just like little thing that I think if you're browsing those, but just something like to practice maybe in your one-on-ones is taking a minute to just breathe, know that you're one-on-one with your employee or your peer. This time is about them, trying to take yourself out of it and put on your listening ears and just be present with them. Maybe lean into your intuition a little bit. What aren't they saying? Asking questions, in a not like an accusatory way, but like, where's that coming from? Or I'm sensing this, like those are kind of some key words to kind of prompt that conversation. But really, my tip is just taking yourself out of it, listening, being in tune to them, seeing what they're not saying.
Yeah. So let's get to this webinar. So we hosted a webinar, had the great opportunity to bring on actually some business leaders who we've implemented this in their company. So Steph, tell us a little bit about where people can find that, what it covers, if you really want to dig in deeper to the mechanics of creating a coaching culture. I think it's a great resource.
Awesome. So we've been working with Wind River Resort and Casino for several years. I actually started working with them before I came to Purpose and Performance Group, and then brought them into the Purpose and Performance Group fold. But they have been committed to growing a coaching culture since 2017. And so on our webinar, we had Director of Team Member Relations, Christopher Orozco, and the General Manager, Chris Hart. And they have really been so inspired by this growing a coaching culture. They actually went to get ICF certified themselves, which is like super amazing and awesome. It really shows that commitment. So we kind of talked to them about the journey, about what, some of the steps that they took, why they wanted to create that coaching culture, and what they're doing to maintain it. And so in the show notes, you can see where to download a recording of that webinar. But it's super impactful, super interesting to hear about the commitment to grow a coaching culture and what it looks like. And it's really just about the consistency of it, right? It's not that you have to continue to do all these big giant trainings. It's just the consistency of enforcing it and modeling it.
Awesome. So we're at the end of our time.
Yeah.
You should go watch the webinar if you
Yes.
can. It's in the show notes. Emma, key takeaways. What do you want people to leave with after this episode?
Coaching is possible. It doesn't have to be hard. You can sit and listen, but it is a necessity. It is a need for managers and people who want to be leaders in their life.
Awesome. Steph, what's your takeaway?
Coaching is really an investment in the potential, the untapped potential of your workforce, right? And so again, by giving them more, you get more as a leader, as an organization. So really looking at it as an investment in the long-term success of your workforce and of whatever your company is up to, whatever your organization is up to. It just takes the entire workforce to this other level of operating and communicating that improves the work environment and really also makes it be a place you want to work.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll say mine, I loved what you said about discretionary effort. And so this idea that coaching is a way to unlock the discretionary effort above and beyond just whatever that minimum effort that's expected for people to give when they are hopeful about something, when they're excited about something. Unlocking that discretionary effort, creating a hopeful atmosphere around the organization. Totally possible. Coaching is an awesome way to do it.
Yeah.
If you are a leader and you don't have a coach, call us. If you are a leader and you're like, hey, we need to take a coaching approach. I've got leaders who have been promoted into their role. They don't understand how to lead. They're taking a very directive approach. I'm seeing people turn over because of it. Give us a call. We'd love to learn more about your specific situation and ask you some questions. And you have the answer. The answer is there, and we could possibly be a part of helping you uncover that and be a resource for you as you solve those problems. And so purposeandperformancegroup.com. You can find us on social channels, wherever. And thank you so much for spending time with us today. And go out there as a leader and listen and coach and know that you have the solutions to your problems and your people have the solutions if we create the space to clarify those and give them the agency to solve them. And so let's all go do it.
Absolutely.
And Steph, thanks.
Thanks, Luke.
Magic in the Room is hosted by Chris Province, Hannah Bratteroo and Luke Freeman, and produced by Ben West. Theme music is by Evan Grimm. Title track Fake Love available on Apple Music, and this podcast was recorded at Storycatcher Studio with video and audio editing and production support by Brad O'Hara and Alicia Crum, with inspiration, strategy and technical support by yours truly, Neil Hughes. Magic in the Room is a production of Purpose and Performance Group. You can find us at purposeandperformancegroup.com, and remember, previous episodes are available at magicintheroom.com.